wife created 20 new marriage rules, so I added just one rule that instantly ended her control system. The list was waiting for me on the kitchen counter when I got home from work, typed out, laminated, and placed right next to my dinner plate. 20 new marriage rules was written at the top in bold letters. At first, I thought it was some kind of joke, but the serious look on her face as she stood with her arms crossed next to the fridge told me everything. "What is this?" I asked, lifting the laminated sheet. "I think our marriage needs more structure," she replied. Her tone left no room for discussion. "These rules will help both of us know where we stand." I looked over the list, my blood pressure rising with each absurd demand. Rule 1 required me to share my location at all times. Rule number 4 said that any purchase over $50 needed her approval. Rule number 12 required me to send hourly updates whenever I was out with friends. The list went on, each rule more controlling than the last. We had been married for 7 years, but the last 6 months had seen a gradual change in our relationship. It started with small things, comments about my friends, suggestions about how I should dress, questions about exactly where I had been during the day. But this was something completely different. "You can't be serious," I said, placing the list back on the counter. "I'm completely serious," she replied. "My friend's husband follows a similar set of guidelines, and they've never been happier." I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized I barely recognized the woman standing in front of me. The person I married had been understanding, kind, someone who valued my independence as much as I valued hers. This person wanted to monitor my bank account, filter my calls, and dictate who I could spend time with. "I need time to think about this," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the anger boiling inside me. "There's nothing to think about," she shot back. "These rules go into effect immediately." I noticed her phone light up with a message. She quickly flipped it over, but not before I caught a glimpse of the group chat she had with her friends. I'd seen enough to know she was giving them updates about her progress with me. That's when it clicked. This wasn't about our marriage at all. It was about control, about showing off to her friends how she had her husband under total command. All those lunch dates with her new country club friends, all those women with their perfect Instagram marriages, she was changing, or maybe just revealing who she really was. I didn't argue anymore. Instead, I ate my dinner quietly while she watched me, expectantly waiting for me to break, to beg, to negotiate. But I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. My mind was already working on something completely different, not on how to follow her rules, but how to end this game once and for all. As I finished my meal, I smiled at her, a smile that clearly confused her. She expected resistance, tears, anger, anything but calm confidence. She didn't know me as well as she thought. I wasn't going to fight her, 20 rules with 20 counter-rules. I didn't need 20. I just needed one. The next morning, I decided to study the list more carefully. Each rule was more absurd than the last. Rule 6 demanded I share all my account passwords. Rule 9 required her approval before I could make plans with anyone. Rule 15 stated I needed to check in with a photo if I was going to be late from work. Rule 17 limited my time at the gym to 1 hour, 3 times a week, always when she could verify my location. These weren't marriage rules. This was a prison sentence with conjugal visits. I watched her getting ready for her weekly brunch with her friends, applying makeup with meticulous precision. Her phone kept buzzing. Casually, I picked it up to hand it to her, making sure to glimpse the screen. The group chat was active. "Can't wait to hear how he took the rules. My husband would never stand for it." "You're so lucky," said another. So that was it. I was becoming a trophy in her social circle, the trained husband who jumped through hoops on command. The thought made me sick. "Give me your phone," I said, handing it to her with a neutral expression. "Thanks," she replied, then paused, studying my face. "Have you thought more about our new arrangement?" "Still processing," I replied calmly. 20 rules is a lot to take in. She looked pleased with my apparent submission. "You'll see, this will make our marriage stronger." After she left, I sat down and analyzed the situation strategically. This wasn't just about control, it was about public perception. She wanted to show her friends that she could completely tame her husband. The question was, when had our equal partnership turned into this power struggle? I remembered how 6 months ago, she had started spending time with the wives of her boss and business partners, women who boasted about controlling every move their husbands made, women who measured their worth by how completely they could dictate their marriages. My wife had always been independent and respectful of boundaries. Now she was becoming someone completely different. I decided to play along temporarily. That night I acted thoughtful but not confrontational. I let her believe I was considering her demands. Meanwhile, I watched her closely. She was sending updates to her friends during dinner. "He's softening," I saw her write. "No real resistance. Easier than I thought." The casual disrespect stung, but I kept my composure. This wasn't about ego, it was about reclaiming our relationship from whatever toxic influence had poisoned it. Over the next 2 days, I watched as she began enforcing small rules. She reminded me to share my location. She questioned a $60 purchase I had made. She called twice while I was having lunch with a colleague. Each time, I responded with minimal resistance, enough to still seem like myself but not enough to trigger confrontation. All the while, I was formulating my response. I knew that arguing against each individual rule would bog me down in endless negotiations where she held all the power. I needed something simpler. Something elegant. Something that would cut through the entire charade in one stroke. On the third night, as we sat down for dinner, she placed a rule violation notepad beside my plate, another new addition to track my infractions. "Do you have something to say?" she asked, clearly expecting me to finally break and beg for compromise. "Actually," I said, meeting her gaze firmly, "I've been thinking a lot about your rules, and I've decided to add one of my own." Her eyebrows shot up in surprise, then narrowed into a suspicious glare. "Your rule?" she asked, as if the concept were entirely foreign. "That wasn't part of the plan. Every relationship needs balance," I said calmly, setting down my fork. "You've had time to think about what you want from this marriage. I've had time to consider what I want." I could see the calculations happening behind her eyes, trying to determine whether pushing back would cause a bigger scene than she wanted. After all, her entire strategy depended on maintaining the illusion that I was willingly accepting her control. "Fine," she said eventually, crossing her arms. I took a sip of water, maintaining eye contact for the necessary moment to let the weight of it land. "My rule is simple, every rule you create for me applies equally to you. No exceptions." The color drained from her face. "That's not how this works." "It's exactly how it works now," I replied, my voice steady but firm. "Location sharing goes both ways. Financial approval for purchases, same limit applies to you. Hourly check-ins when you go out, I expect the same courtesy." "But my friends," "This isn't about your friends," I interrupted. "It's about our marriage. We're either equal partners or we're nothing." She shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "Some of these rules don't make sense for me. I'm not the one who, I challenged. Who needs monitoring? Who can't be trusted? Is that what you think of me after 7 years?" She didn't respond. She just stared at her plate. "Here's the implementation plan," I continued. "Starting tomorrow, we both follow your 20 rules plus my 1 rule of equality. If either of us breaks any rule, that rule is permanently removed for both of us. If you refuse to follow your own rules, then the entire system dissolves immediately." I could see the realization dawn on her face. Her perfect control system was being turned against her. She would have to live under the same restrictions she had designed for me. "This is ridiculous," she muttered at last. "The whole point was to create structure in our relationship." I didn't correct her. "The point was control, and I wasn't going to be controlled. I reached for my phone and opened the location sharing app she had insisted I install. Let's start with rule number 1, shall we? I activated permanent location sharing and slid the phone across the table. Your turn. She looked at the phone as if it might bite her. I need to think about this. There's nothing to think about, I replied, echoing her own words from days before. These rules go into effect immediately. Her fingers drummed nervously on the table as the trap she had built closed in around her. She had to either follow her own restrictive rules, admit they were unreasonable, or refuse and expose her true intentions. What if I don't accept your addition? She asked, trying to find a loophole. I shrugged. Then we have a bigger conversation about why you believe you should dictate terms without being willing to live by them yourself. The silence stretched between us, heavy with implication. Finally, she reached for the phone and, with visible reluctance, activated her location sharing. Good, I said. Now let's talk about rule number 2, phone access codes. I'll need yours just as you demanded mine. As I watched her internal struggle play out across her face, I knew the game was already changing. This wasn't about winning or domination. It was about restoring the balance that had been lost. The moment she had to live by her own rules, her true purpose would become crystal clear. And that was exactly what I wanted her to see. The next morning brought the inevitable confrontation. She'd had time to regroup, to consult with her friends, to craft a counterattack. We need to talk about these rules, she announced while making coffee. I agree, I replied calmly. Which one is giving you trouble first? The hourly check-ins, the spending limits, the social media approval process. This isn't what I intended, she said, her jaw tightening. You're twisting the purpose. Am I? I leaned against the counter. Let's be honest, these rules weren't created to strengthen our marriage. They were created so you could tell your friends how well you've trained your husband. Her face flushed with anger and recognition. I had struck a nerve. That's not true, she protested, but her voice lacked conviction. I just wanted more structure. Structure would have been a conversation between equal partners, I interrupted. What you created was a power play. And now you're upset because I won't just submit. She changed tactics. You're being childish. This eye for an eye approach isn't constructive. Then let's be constructive, I suggested. Tell me which rules you find unreasonable to follow yourself, and we'll eliminate them for both of us. She hesitated, caught in her own contradiction. Admitting that any rule was unreasonable would undermine her entire position. Yet she clearly wasn't ready to live under the same restrictions she had imposed on me. This isn't a negotiation, she said finally, trying to reassert control. You're right, I agreed. It's not. Either the rules apply equally, or they don't exist. That's my boundary, and it's not negotiable. Her phone buzzed with a message. I raised an eyebrow. According to Rule 16, all messages must be read aloud to your spouse. Who is it? She gripped her phone tighter. This is ridiculous. It's your rule, I reminded her. It's from the group chat, they're waiting to hear how successfully you've implemented your control system. The expression on her face confirmed my suspicion, they were indeed waiting for updates on her domestic victory. What exactly do you tell them about me? I asked, my tone hardening. Do you laugh together about how compliant I am? Do you compete to see who has the most obedient husband? It's not like that, she protested, but weakly. Show me the chat, I said, not a request, a demand. For a moment I thought she might refuse, then reluctantly, she handed over her phone. I scrolled through the messages, my suspicions confirmed with every swipe. The group, 6 women including my wife, were indeed comparing notes on their husbands, ranking them in their mission, sharing control tactics. Congratulations, I said, handing her phone back. You're winning the competition for the most controlled husband. Unfortunately for you, I'm withdrawing from the contest. What does that mean? She asked, her voice small now. It means I'm not playing this game. I'm not going to be the subject of your power experiment or the punchline in your group chat. I married a partner, not a warden. I reached for the laminated rules sheet still prominently displayed on the fridge and took it down. So here's what happens now, either we follow every rule equally, starting with you sharing your group chat messages in real time, or we scrap this whole system and have a real conversation about our marriage. Her eyes flicked to the rules sheet in my hands, then back to my face, searching for weakness, for an opening to reassert control. She found none. You wouldn't understand, she tried. The other wives, I don't care about the other wives, I interrupted. I care about us. And right now there is no us. There's just you giving orders and the husband you think you can control. I placed the rule sheet on the counter between us. Your move. Her strategy shifted over the next few days, cycling through every manipulation tactic in her arsenal. First came anger, accusations that I was being unreasonable, that I didn't trust her. She said I was overreacting. When that failed to move me, she switched to tears, sobbing about how she just wanted to feel secure in our marriage. I remained unmoved. Security doesn't come from control, I told her as she wiped her eyes. It comes from mutual respect. When emotional appeals failed, she tried recruiting allies. Her mother called, concerned about trouble in paradise. A mutual friend reached out to suggest I was being too harsh. I recognized these interventions for what they were, extensions of her attempt to pressure me into submission. To each potential mediator, my response was the same: this is between my wife and me. But tell me, did she mention the 20 rules she created? Or just my one? The silence that followed was revealing every time. By day 5, she tried a new approach: selective compliance. She agreed to follow some rules while arguing that others shouldn't apply to her. I don't need spending limits, she insisted. I'm better with money than you. That's not what our credit card statements show, I replied calmly. But if the rule is unfair, we can remove it entirely for both of us. That wasn't what she wanted either. Every concession undermined the control structure she had built. As I predicted, living under her own rules was quickly becoming intolerable. The breaking point came on day 7. She had gone shopping with her fellow rulemaking friends without sending the hourly updates her own system demanded. When she came home, arms full of bags, I was waiting. That's 7 rule violations in one afternoon, I noted, checking my phone. No location updates, no hourly check-ins, no spending approvals, no social activity verification. I was busy, she snapped. You know who I was with. That excuse wouldn't work for me under your system, I pointed out. So it doesn't work for you either. She dropped the bags by the door. What do you want from me? To admit this isn't working. Fine. It's not working. That's progress, I acknowledged. But I want more than that. I want you to understand why it's not working. These rules were never about strengthening our marriage. They were about control, and impressing your friends. That's not fair, she protested, but weakly. Let's be honest for once, I pressed. Would you have created these rules if you weren't trying to compete with your friends? If they weren't comparing notes on how to control their husbands? Her silence was answer enough. This is what bothers me the most, I continued. Not that you tried to control me, but that you thought I wouldn't notice. That you believed I would just go along with becoming a project you could brag about to your friends. She sank into a chair, the facade finally crumbling. They make it look so easy. Their husbands just comply. Then their husbands have given up, I said. Or their wives aren't being honest about how those dynamics really work. Either way, that's not the kind of marriage I want. For the first time since this all began, I saw genuine emotion on her face, not the calculated tears from before, but real vulnerability. What happens now? She asked softly. I sat across from her. Now we decide what kind of marriage we actually want. One where we're partners, or one where we're constantly fighting for control. I don't want to fight anymore, she admitted. Neither do I agreed. But I won't be controlled, not by you, not by anyone. She nodded slowly, and in that moment, I knew something fundamental had shifted. The power game was ending, not because I had won, but because I had refused to play on her terms. What about the rules? She asked. I reached for the laminated sheet that had started this entire ordeal. I think we both know what needs to happen to these. 2 months have passed since the rule sheet went through the shredder. The sound of it being torn to pieces marked the beginning of something new between us. Not a return to our old marriage, but the creation of something stronger. That night, after shredding the rules, we talked until dawn. We truly talked, no power games or hidden agendas. She admitted how her new friends had influenced her, how their constant competition over controlling their husbands had been seductive. She had felt powerful being part of their circle, respected for demonstrating dominance in her marriage. But, it never felt right, she confessed. It wasn't who we are. I just got wrapped up in it. I shared my perspective too, how I'd seen her change, how I'd felt betrayed by her attempts to control me, and above all, how much I had missed the equal partnership we once had. The next day, she left the group chat. 2 days later, she declined the weekly brunch. By the end of the week, she had sent a clear message to her former friends: her marriage was not a competition, and her husband was not a project to manage. The transition wasn't always smooth. Old habits die hard. There were moments when she slipped back into controlling behaviors, testing to see if my boundaries still held. Each time, I calmly reminded her of our new understanding, not with anger or resentment, but with unshakable clarity about what I would and would not accept. What surprised me most was how quickly the power dynamic rebalanced once I refused to play her game. The truth was, her control had only existed because I allowed it. The moment I set my boundary, with that simple rule that what applies to one must apply to both, her entire system collapsed. We've established new patterns now. When decisions need to be made, we make them together. When boundaries need to be set, they apply equally. Trust has returned gradually, built on actions instead of demands. We check in with each other, not because of rules, but because we choose to. Last week, she got a message from one of her former friends. Her husband had finally pushed back against her control system, leaving after being treated like a subordinate one too many times. Now she wanted advice on how to bring him back in line. My wife's response was simple: I don't have that answer anymore. What worked for us was treating each other as equals. Later that night, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, she turned to me with genuine curiosity. How did you know that one rule would change everything? Because control only works when it's one-sided, I explained. The moment it had to be reciprocal, it revealed itself for what it really was. She nodded thoughtfully. You could have just walked away. Most men would have. Leaving was never the goal, I said. Restoring balance was. I didn't want to win a power struggle, I wanted to end it entirely. That's the lesson in all of this, I continued. In relationships, the person with the most power isn't the one who can impose the most rules or control the most outcomes. Real power lies in knowing your boundaries and having the strength to uphold them. I didn't need 20 rules to counter her 20 rules. I didn't need threats or ultimatums or emotional manipulation. I just needed one principle, enforced clearly: what's good for one must be good for both. In the end, that single boundary did what no amount of arguments ever could: it transformed our marriage from a power struggle back into a partnership where